Welcome to Fight Week on 5, brought to you by the 5 Reasons Sports Network. I'm your host, Jonathan, aka Three Piece Combo. On my left, we got the fight genius, Mr. Alf Arteaga. We got a great main event. How are you doing, my friend?
Great. Very excited for this Saturday night.
Yeah, I mean, it's when the heavyweights fight, it's always a little bit more of a spectacle, right? There's always that one punch knockout ability of it just happening and just that being it, right? Unlike other weight classes. And with this fight, we have two of the probably the most dangerous people in the heavyweight division. You have the greatest heavyweight of all time, Stipe Miocic, taking on probably the scariest dude in the heavyweight division right now, Francis Ngannou. Now, getting into that main event, obviously, it is a rematch. The first time that it happened, Ngannou got dominated, right? That first round is pretty competitive, but after that, Stipe pretty much used his wrestling, and Ngannou didn't have that ability to go 5 rounds. He was knocking people out so fast. He didn't really have to test that cardio. Now, after the fight with Miocic, he kind of had that same thing, right? He had that one fight with Derek Lewis that went 3 rounds, but he threw like 6 strikes in the second 2 rounds. And then after that, it was just first round knockout after first round knockout. I think it's 4 in a row at this point. But let's get into this main event a little bit. What were your thoughts on the first fight and how it went down?
I thought that Francis looked extremely green, and he was throwing lead hooks. Okay, if you know anything about boxing, you throw lead hooks, you're opening yourself up to get countered and countered bad. In the UFC, if you throw lead hooks, you get taken down. Simple as that. And Stipe, I thought, kind of put him through the ropes in that first fight. One guy looked like he belonged in a UFC Heavyweight Championship fight, and the other guy looked like he had only been fighting since 2013, which was the truth. So, I thought he looked terrible in that first fight. And Stipe looked like who he is. Stipe Miocic, the best heavyweight of all time.
I mean, Francis was coming into that fight. He was extremely raw, right? He was purely a boxer, mostly when he moved from Cameroon to, I think it was France, right? Mostly to go to become a boxer, and then just kind of down the line, it became more mixed martial arts. So he was very raw then, right? He barely could even speak English, but now, his English is very well, right? He went on the Joe Rogan podcast. He has an amazing story, starting just digging holes in Cameroon, having a crazy, sad childhood, as some, as privileged Americans, we try to look at it as a feel good story, right? But it is sad because when he talks about it, he's like, I didn't really get to have a childhood and do things that most people just kind of take for granted. So he's coming from really strong back roots, right? And he was very raw, and now he's kind of become a little more polished. I feel like over the last couple of years, he's probably been working on that takedown defense, and he knows what he did wrong getting into this fight. Let me ask you, how do you feel like that? What do you feel that Francis can do differently to avoid that same fate from the first fight?
Well, I think he has to fight a much more compact fight. He has to stay inside of his frame and keep his punches a little straighter. And the great Teddy Atlas always said, you can have a nuclear bomb, but if you don't have anything to deliver it with, it's worthless, which is the truth. And Francis Ngannou has a nuclear bomb. It's that right hand. But he has to get to that right hand. And how do you get to that right hand? Stay within your frame. Throw tight, short punches to set up that right hand. Don't start winging it and just hope to get lucky. If you watched him as of late, his last 4 fights, they all kind of worked, they kind of worked out the same way, all 4 fights. All 4 fights were, Curtis Blades kind of ducked in, got caught, dropped. Cain Velasquez went for a takedown, got dropped. Junior Dos Santos tried to dance around with him, tried to show him, a few tricks on his feet, got dropped. Rosenstrike, he didn't even try. He just got clocked once and it was a wrap. You know what I mean? So
right.
I don't know. He needs to stay within his frame, fight a tighter fight than he has before.
Yeah, I mean, he came out last time, and even in his last couple of fights, he's coming out just swinging quite wildly, right? He's not, like you said, he's not staying within himself. And for him to win this fight, I think he's going to have to not go in there with the mind of, I'm going to have to knock this guy out in the first round. I think he's going to have to just go and be a little more tight. One thing this might remind me of is kind of Justin Gaethje versus Tony Ferguson, right? I want to say what's up to David Smith. Appreciate you checking out the video. And he's not thinking, can Stipe take the shots from that first fight. We'll actually talk about that next. That's a good point. But getting into Ngannou, right? If he's able to do kind of what Justin Gaethje did in that fight with Tony Ferguson, where he's not trying to knock his head off every time, but maybe just do 70, 80% and just control it a little bit more, stay more within himself, don't present his hips as much for the takedown, right? And he's able to keep his takedown defense a little more short. If he does that, I feel like he has the ability to win this fight maybe 3 rounds deep, right? 3 or 4 rounds deep before his cardio maybe starts to give out. And I could be wrong. His cardio could really change, but from what we've seen from Francis so far, and it's not his fault, is that he just knocks people out very quickly, right? And even the wrestlers, like Curtis Blades couldn't really get him down. Like you said, JDS, he tried to dance around him, didn't really work so well. Jairzinho, he's a kickboxer, a pro kickboxer, right? I think 75 pro kickboxing wins, or 70 upwards of that. And he still just got demolished. But Francis just went in swinging, right? And he can't do that against Stipe Miocic because that's going to be that he's going to just get taken down again. And if that happens, it's going to be pretty much an uphill battle from there from Francis. But let's get into what Stipe has to do a little bit.
And another key thing about that, if Francis throws winging punches to Stipe, remember, he's a Golden Gloves champion, okay? He knows what he's doing as far as a boxer. He'll just step inside of those punches and take them on the side of the head or on the neck and just crouch and just have those punches wing over his head. So he knows how to step into those big winging punches and then deliver his own. So Francis has to be very, very, very careful not to be completely careless, because every wild swing he takes at Stipe could land air and could get a takedown for Stipe. So it could cost him the fight if he gets reckless like he did in the first one.
Yeah, absolutely. He cannot be reckless. And I think if he's not reckless and he's able to, shore up that takedown defense a little bit more, he is going to have Usman in the corner. And I'm not sure how much they've worked together before, but that's going to be interesting to see. I want to say shout out to Trevian Vision Productions. Francis is scary, kind of reminds you of Wilder. I mean, that's true, right? He has that one punch knockout ability. And, the only difference with maybe Wilder is that, you'll see it later in the rounds for Wilder, but with Francis, he'll just knock you out in the first round, right? It's a little bit different with Francis because he'll get you out there a little bit quicker than Wilder. I mean, you could probably speak to that a little bit more than I can, but Francis
they're
does
so
it pretty
similar.
quick.
They're so similar. First of all, both guys, took up boxing, took up combat sports later on in life. Wilder did as well. Wilder very famously only got into a gym 18 months later. He won the bronze medal in the Olympics, which is insane. It's unheard of to only be in the ring for 18 months and then win a bronze medal. They're very, very, very similar. Both are very green boxers, but both of them have dynamite in the right hands. Wilder has shown throughout his career he could get completely dominated, just like he did against Luis Ortiz the second time, and then just land one round, one overhand right in the 11th round and end it. So, both guys are extremely similar in that regard. Both very green boxers.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be interesting to see if Francis is able to carry that power past the first round, right? Because almost all of his knockouts, if not all of them, have been in the first round. But let's get into Stipe's side of it, right? Because in that first fight, in the first couple of rounds, and David was mentioning this as well, he took a couple of those shots, right? But he kind of rolled with them, so he was able to actually eat them. And if you look at him after the fight, I mean, he was pretty beat up, right? He probably took more damage than Francis. So let's get into this one. He's a little bit older, right? He's coming off a fight where he was, if I'm wrong, he was losing the fight with Daniel Cormier until he came back and won that one, right? The third fight. And so he's becoming a little step slower. Don't get me wrong. He's the champion. He's the greatest heavyweight of all time, but he's slowing down a little bit. Can Stipe withstand one of those shots again from Francis like he did in the first fight?
Well, all we know is what, and it's a great thing for, as far as fighting, sometimes it's hard to go back, 3, 4, 5 years to the last time that they fought or the last time they fought somebody who was similar, because it really doesn't really matter. What matters with fighters is what they've done lately, because that's who they are. Guys age, guys learn, guys get better, guys get worse. And if you watch Stipe against Cormier, yes, it was absolute magic what he did in the second fight. But he kind of looked like a shot fighter both times until he didn't, right? I think he's gonna have to be as slick as possible. He's gonna have to be as slick as he's ever been, and he can't fade an exchange with Ngannou. He gets into an exchange with Ngannou, and Ngannou lands a good right hand. It probably ends right there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he can't take any shots this time, right? The first time there was a little bit there because, his chin was a little more fresh. He was a little bit younger. Not anymore. He's a couple years older. I mean, we got to remember between those fights and Daniel Cormier, it was almost a whole year in between, right? They took a long time off before they fought. So he aged quite a bit since that last Ngannou fight, a couple of years in between it. So I don't think he can, right? He's going to have to avoid it completely. I think the clinch is going to be his best friend, right? Getting into that clinch, pushing Francis up against the cage. And I think he's going to have to do that. But as far as Francis goes, let's get into his game plan a little bit. What do you think Francis has to do to win this fight?
Well, I'll say one thing. If any indication, the company that Francis Ngannou is keeping these days, if that's any indication, Stipe's in serious trouble Saturday night. Because he's worked with Teddy Atlas. He's gone to Brooklyn to work in I forgot the name of that gym, but there's pretty good people there, okay, that would clean up his game. Let's say it needs cleaning up. And he had a couple of sessions with Teddy Atlas, and Teddy Atlas is a guy that you don't tend to forget, okay? And Teddy Atlas drilled into him, look, you have to have a delivery system. You can't think that you're going to land your right hand because then he's going to play off of it. If all you have is a lead right hook, he's going to play off of it the entire fight, and he's going to beat you, period. So it has to be delivered with something else. Francis has shown some chops in his latest fights. I would say, especially in the Junior Dos Santos fight, he was showing a jab that looked a little straighter, a little snappier, a little bit more legit. I think it's been time since then. So that's the key. Has he learned? I think he has. So, it makes it a much more intriguing fight. If this was just a rematch from their first fight, it's over. Okay. It'll be a Stipe, Stipe will just run out the clock as soon as they step into the octagon. But it's a different fight this time. Really different.
Yeah. I mean, you have to think that within that time, right? Francis has won a couple of fights in a row, and he felt he deserved Stipe for a while now. So I wouldn't doubt that he's been preparing for Stipe and knocking these other guys out just in between, right? He's probably been, focused on Stipe, thinking about Stipe. He's been asking for the title shot for, like we said, a good time now, but that trilogy had to happen, right? So now there's a little bit of movement in.
Yep. Well, it looks like we froze. Yep. It looked like he froze for a second there.
Okay. Yeah, I was just saying, what do you feel like Stipe has to do to get the fight to change what happens in the fight and get this fight done?
Okay, he's going to have to, I think he's going to have to get inside. He's going to have to fight in the clinch, and he has to step inside of those punches. Now, how is he going to do that? I think that this time he has to expect a jab. To be honest with you, I know it's going to sound crazy to say that it's easy, but you know what I mean? But it was easy. It was easy last time for Stipe. There was no jabs coming. So all you got to do is just step into his chest. You step into his chest, those punches can't do anything. Okay? Those big, wild, haymakers, they really can't do any damage whatsoever because, frankly, it's illegal to hit you in the back of the head. Okay? So he's going to have to somehow get it there. How do you get it there? He's going to have to block that jab. That jab comes, he's going to have to either get under it, go for takedowns under it, or block it and counter off of it and then get in close. He fights at a distance. That right hand could come at any moment, and if it comes and it lands, fight's over. So he has to stay close. He has to stay close to Francis the whole way.
He can't make this a kickboxing fight at all, right?
No.
He has to turn this into an MMA fight. He has to make this a fight that's going to drain Francis. I mean, you kind of want to think about what Dustin Poirier did to Conor McGregor, right? He got into him, he took him down, he wore him out, he didn't let him keep the distance, because when he kept his distance, right, he wobbled Dustin Poirier, and Dustin Poirier even admitted that he was hurt by those shots. So Stipe is gonna have to do the same thing, right? He's gonna have to clinch early, he's gonna try to take him down, and avoid that shot. And like you said, I think it's going to have to be a decision win. I don't think he can TKO him. I think Francis is a little bit better this time. It's going to be a little bit harder to take him down. But I think Stipe does have a good chance to win his fight. I mean, if you looked at all the times his last championship fights were predicted by the odds makers, every time he was an underdog, he's won, right? Every time he's a favorite, he's lost. Again, he's the underdog. So that's interesting to see what that'll do to the mentality of Stipe, because he kind of has that underdog mentality. You know, he's just kind of that normal guy. He's like a firefighter in Ohio, right? He does that as a side job, and he still is a UFC heavyweight champion, you know, as kind of the other side job. So it's interesting to see, but let's get into the predictions of this fight. What do you feel like this fight? How do you feel like this fight's going to go down, and who do you think gets the win?
Okay, I think that Francis has gone to school on it since then, and you know, Stipe is going to have to dance through the raindrops for 5 rounds to win this fight. I don't think he can stop Francis. Okay, I don't think stopping Francis is in the cards. I don't think Francis winning a decision is in the cards either. So each guy has to win a certain way. Francis is going to have to get rid of Stipe in the first 2 rounds. If he doesn't, it's going to distance, and Stipe is going to win the decision. So I'm going to say Stipe knows exactly what's coming, okay? He's an underdog, plus 110. I think it's too tempting, all right? Last time that the lights were bright for Francis Ngannou against Derek Lewis, it was a dud. The last time he stepped in for a title, he fought his worst fight of his career against Stipe Miocic. I say Stipe is going to get it done. Too many things point to that very likely scenario. And I believe him when he says, you know, Francis will be champ when I'm done.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good take. I mean, a lot of people have been looking at that Stipe, you know, saying, because if you look at the facts, right, you can only look at and observe what a fighter has given you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Francis has only given us first round knockouts, and maybe we want to see more from him. We want to see if that cardio, what's he's done, but he's knocking out top contenders in the first round. It's not his fault. It's not his fault that he can't hold back, right, and wait for these guys. He's knocking these people out in the first round, and you know, that's just what we've seen from him. So for us to say that he's been doing these things that we don't know is a big risk, right? So if you're betting on this fight, it's probably safer to bet on Stipe, because you can bet on things that you've seen, right? You wouldn't want to bet on Francis. Obviously, the chances for him to get a knockout is always going to be there, right? But it's a little more risky to bet on Francis, because if the first 5 minutes pass you by and that fight's still going, then you're going to have to heavily favor Stipe for the rest of the fight due to the cardio, championship, you know, mentality, having that 5-round experience, and being able to take Francis down probably more as the fight goes on and as Francis gets tired, right? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say, screw all that. Anyways, I'm still going to go with Francis Ngannou. I think Francis has Francis, you know, I feel like maybe he's put in the work in the lab. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, right? Maybe this fight is the same exact thing. But I feel like Francis has a vibe about him that he's going to come out, and I feel like that he's going to get the knockout. I feel like he's going to get Stipe. Maybe not in the first round, right? I think Stipe might exit the first round, but I think Francis shows that he's been working on his cardio a little bit, gets the second round knockout. Francis Ngannou, and new UFC heavyweight world champion.
Yeah, that could easily happen, and you know, I wouldn't mind it either. I'm a big Francis fan, but like I said, you know, I think there's more avenues for Stipe. One of them is, you know, he's the better boxer. Yep. You know, he's an ex Golden Gloves champion, and you could see it. You watch his film, you could really see it in their first fight. In their first fight, you could see a guy that has it all. Stipe stepping inside of punches, taking the punches behind the head, taking them on the shoulder, crouching behind the shoulder, taking hooks to the upper shoulder. He had every trick in the book. He's going to need them this time because he can't take any of them.
No, because if, like you said, if one of those shots connect, that's it, right? So, but I'm going to think that Francis is going to connect one of those shots. I think it's more likely this time than last time, right? Maybe he starts to the body first, right? He mixes it up and he starts with the body first. That would be interesting, right? Because if you look at a lot of videos that Francis has been doing, right, he's been posting so many videos of him just taking body shots for no reason, like no reason why. But you don't know. Maybe he starts to the body, then he goes to the head in the second round, then he knocks it out, right? But I think Stipe is definitely the safer bet. I'm still going to go with Francis just because I'm playing straight favoritism and biasism right there, right? But let's get into the next fight, right? Because I think either way, whoever comes out of this fight is going to have a huge opportunity facing Jon Jones, because whether it's Stipe Miocic versus Jon Jones, you're talking about the greatest heavyweight of all time, the only other guy that's beat Daniel Cormier, right, facing Jon Jones. If Jon Jones can capture that heavyweight belt, he just kind of poops on Daniel Cormier, right? A little bit more, kind of adds a little bit of insult to injury there. And on the other hand, if you have Francis Ngannou versus Jon Jones, you have a guy that can knock you out just like that versus a guy that's a little bit smaller coming up to the heavyweight division, probably a little bit better wrestler, right? Has the ability, kind of like Stipe does, to mix it up and just have that large size and that large frame. But then you have a really, really fun fight. And that's all. I think that's going to be a super fight as well. Ngannou versus Jon Jones. Which matchup do you like better? And what do you see coming up with the future of the heavyweight division?
I think either one is great. I think against Stipe, I think it's historic. Against Francis Ngannou, it has more of a like a circus atmosphere because essentially you're just waiting for Ngannou to hit him once. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because nobody that Jon Jones has ever faced can bang like Ngannou can fight. It can bang. So I would think the Stipe Miocic matchup is more historic. But I would warn people, man, because I've heard a lot of people saying, "Oh, you saw what happened to Izzy Adesanya? That's what's going to happen to Jon Jones in heavyweight." I don't know if you've seen, but he walks around at 235 pounds.
He's a big dude. He's a big dude.
So
he's very, very big.
It's very likely he's been a heavyweight all this time. You know, not a giant heavyweight, but a big heavyweight. You know, right. 225, 230 pounds. You know, it's likely he's been a heavyweight this whole time, and he's just starved himself to fight at light heavyweight. So I would warn people. I think he belongs against either one. He's a legitimate heavyweight. And to be honest with you, I don't have any odds in front of me, but I'll bet any amount anybody wants to count, he will be a favorite against either one.
Yeah, I agree. I think his skill set, you know, his ability to use the teep kick to keep distance, right? Keep that low kick, get the clinch. He's good in the clinch. You know, he's good at takedowns. He's good at, you know, backing you up against the fence and just making it a dirty fight, right? I definitely think he's a favorite in both fights. I think he beats Francis probably a little bit easier, if I'm being honest with you. I think he beats Francis a little bit easier than he beats Stipe. I think Stipe might give him a little more troubles, but obviously the probably more fun fight would be the Francis fight. But like you said, historically, the greatest heavyweight of all time versus the potentially the greatest of all time, right? That is a fight of massive proportions that would sell out a big arena, and that's what's coming up in the future. Very soon in the future, this fight's coming up in the arena. But let's get to this co-main event, potential co-main event, right? It's not the co-main event just yet officially, but we got Vicente Luque, one of the most fun fighters to watch in the UFC. I think out of his 12 wins, he has 11 finishes, and then he's taking on Tyron Woodley, loser of his last 3. Just coming kind of sloping down, right? Dana White's talked about cutting fighters. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens in this fight. But let's get to this one. Is this Woodley's last chance in the UFC before he potentially kind of gets that Yoel Romero treatment and get cut?
Yeah, I believe so. And it always feels as if Tyron Woodley is fighting the same fight that he's fought since 1976. You know what I mean? Like I've been watching him fight forever, and it's the same Tyron Woodley fight every single time. He never brings anything new. I think people are bored of it. And unless he could get a finish, an early finish, and then call somebody out and then actually go through with, you know, fighting somebody on, you know, let's say in 3 months' notice.
Like a Leon Edwards?
Yeah, somebody like that. And, you know, and actually look exciting and competitive, because part of this is entertainment. You want to headline fights, and he's co-main event. So obviously he's still in the headlining business. You want to headline fights, you don't want to put people to sleep. And to be honest with you, Tyron Woodley has been putting people to sleep, and not the good way.
Not at all.
You know, the bad way for about a couple of years already. So
since he's lost his title, he's been very boring, right?
Yes.
Super boring to watch, like horrible to watch. But on the other hand, you have Vicente Luque, and I think he's the first guy that doesn't have the wrestling pedigree like the last 3, right? If you talk about Kamaru Usman, one of the best, you know, takedown artists in the UFC currently, right? You have Colby Covington, another guy that's going to take you down, right? You got Gilbert Burns, another guy that's going to take you down. So he's going up against these guys that didn't take you down, but now he's going against that he's going to stand up with. Now, Woodley kind of only has that one strike, right? That overhand, right? And then Luque, on the other hand, he'll start with the jabs. He's mainly a counter striker, right? He likes to wait a little bit more. He'll throw that leg kick. He'll counter the jab with the leg kick or counter the jab with the jab himself, right? He does a little good job with that. And he's fun to watch, right? And as the fight goes on, he gets better. I was watching his fight against Brian Barberena, and he was, he won the first round, but he lost the second and third round, and he won that fight with 6 seconds left in the fight, right? He got a TKO stoppage, double, flying knee, second knee to get the fight done, and I was like stunned. Even though I looked at the fight result already, I forgot that it wasn't going to be a decision because it was going so late. But Luque is a fun fighter, right? He's knocked out. He's given you so many performances. The Mike Perry fight was great. How do you feel like this fight's going to go down? Because I think if Luque wins this fight, he can actually get the win. But how do you feel like Vincent saying Luque's pressure going to do against Tyron Woodley again?
You know what? I didn't do my homework. I needed to watch his fight against Mike Perry because I think he'd fight him very much the same way. I vaguely remember the fight. I do remember him circling and just pot-shotting him from the outside because Mike Perry's one of those guys that he likes to crouch and try to land one punch or try to get into a clinch, right? So I think Tyron Woodley's going to try to do pretty much the same thing. He's going to try to get into clinches and do some dirty boxing and try to get inside. So I think he can control the fight that way. And I think judges are probably ready to vote against Tyron Woodley and give rounds to his opponent. So he has a great opportunity. And his opportunity is just to fight a clean fight. Keep circling left and don't get into clinches. Just keep your distance and throw your punches from the outside. And I think that should be enough because let's be honest here. In my opinion, I think Tyron Woodley should have retired after his last fight and gone to the booth because he's good at it. He's good on TV. That's what he should be doing.
Yeah, I mean, was like a post-fight announcer or one of those things. You know what I mean? He has the TV skills, not the best musician per se, with his album and all that stuff. But he's a personality, right? He's one of those guys that can do it. But getting into this fight, I don't think Woodley wins this fight, right? I think he's past his prime. I think that he's a little bit slower. He's a little more hesitant now, right? And if he hesitates against Luque, he's just going to get, not put to sleep maybe, but he's going to get hit with some shots, right? He does have that one-punch power ability, right? He has that ability to catch you with that overhand right. But I think Luque is good enough to avoid that. He's good in the clinch. He has a couple of submission wins as well. So if Tyron Woodley tries to take him down, he's good off his back, right? So I think Luque has the upper hand in this fight. But who do you think is going to win this one? Because I think Luque is going to go ahead and get it done. Probably TKO in second round, if not a decision.
Yeah, I think you know what? I'll go decision. But I think there'll be moments where he can probably get the stoppage, but decide, you know what, it's not worth it. Let me just get the W and just, bank it away. I don't need the finish against Tyron Woodley. And yeah, he wins by decision.
Yeah, I think that's likely because Woodley has a, maybe not recently, but he's had a decent chin before, right? Burns kind of tested it and knocked it up real good. But I think that's going to be a good fight. I think it's going to be an exciting fight because Luque is going to pressure you, right? And he's not really going to focus on the takedowns. He can take you down, but he's not going to focus on the takedowns quite as much as a Gilbert Burns, as a Colby Covington, as a Kamaru Usman, right? So I think that's going to be a fun fight. But let's get into the one of the hype trains, right? One of the people that kind of had the hype train derailed. He lost that fight against Chito Vera. It was kind of, that low leg kick, that same thing that kind of hurt Conor McGregor, that low leg kick that really hurt him. But he's still kind of a guy that's on the way up, right? He's taking on Thomas Almeida, a guy who's, fought on the higher ranks of the division. What do you think about that fight coming up?
You know what? I could, since I'm such a big boxing fan, I could spot a setup a mile away. And this is a setup. Thomas Almeida is a guy who tries to disguise movement with stand-up skill. And I don't think that's going to work against Sean O'Malley. Sean O'Malley is a guy that, let's be fair about this. Thomas Almeida, not the greatest chin. And he's a guy who, like I said, he tries to disguise movement with skill. That's the worst thing you could do against a slick boxer like Sean O'Malley, because what he's going to do is he's just going to move him into punches. And it's going to be really simple. And you're going to watch the fight. And actually, this is a fight that I'm going to see if I could get a good price on it, because I think a knockout can easily happen here early.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. And I think Sean O'Malley is going to try to move him into punches, because Thomas Almeida is a guy who's easily susceptible to that. Okay. So I could see a scenario where Sean O'Malley is going to miss punches on purpose just to move him into his straight right hand and then finish him that way. And I hate to call it a setup, because the UFC is really good about putting on really good fights, but this is a setup.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I'm looking at the odds right now. O'Malley wins by TKO. You can get it. Best odds is plus 140, right? So for that, that might not be not too bad of odds because I think you're right. He's gonna do something like what he did to Sean Strickland, right? He just did that little feint, and he'll feint you, and then he'll get you to where you want to be, and then he'll deliver that shot as you're moving into it due to his feint. So I think it's gonna be a fun one. I don't think Almeida can get it done. I think Sean O'Malley. The leg kick doesn't necessarily, I listen to his reasoning why he doesn't feel like it's a loss. Maybe it's not a mental loss because with all those leg kicks being thrown, for it to hit the nerve like that is kind of rare, right? It doesn't happen all the time. Usually it's more of an accumulation of those leg kicks. So I can understand why he doesn't feel like maybe he lost. Maybe it was just like more of an injury thing, kind of like that. It's a legit loss, but I do think that I can understand why he sees that he didn't lose and why he's still mentally there. I don't feel like he's going to lose his fight. I think this fight he's going to be a lot better. I think he's going to show that the hype train isn't just a hype train. It's legit, and he's going to work himself up to the division, probably get himself a higher ranked fight moving up into the fight.
Yeah, I think Chito Vera kind of showed the blueprint, and unfortunately for Thomas Almeida, he's not Chito Vera. You got to close the distance. You got to get inside of those punches. You got to get into a grappling match with Sean O'Malley. You can't get into a boxing match with him. He's too slick a boxer. He knows what he's doing when at distance. This could be a train wreck. And at plus 140, yeah, I'm putting something on an O'Malley TKO.
Yeah, that's some good money odds right there to get that one. Let's get into the boxing world a little bit because we do have some boxing fights coming up. One of the bigger fights, Alexander Povetkin taking on Dillian Whyte. How do you feel about that fight? Because that's a pretty big fight coming up this weekend.
Yeah, that's a rematch. And Dillian Whyte had to get this, okay? He had to get it back. They fought in August, okay? For 4 rounds, Dillian Whyte was absolutely embarrassing the older Povetkin, who's probably on the way out. Dropped him twice in the 4th round. 5th round starts, and it looks like he's just going to get rid of Povetkin. Here comes a left uppercut in the middle of the round, and Dillian Whyte is a corpse. So it was one of the most surprising knockouts of the year. So what does Dillian Whyte do? He has to get it back right away. Smart by him, because if he loses again, it's, he wants to get the winner of Joshua Fury. That ain't going to happen if he loses again. He says it was absolutely lucky. It was a lucky punch out of nowhere. If you watch the fight, it was a lucky punch out of nowhere. Povetkin did only one thing the entire fight, which was that left uppercut that just managed to land in the 5th round and laid him out. So I would say it doesn't happen this time, okay? And Dillian Whyte takes care of business. But, he's got to get it back, and I think he does get it back. I believe him I believe every word of his that he says that it was absolutely lucky, because it really was.
Do you feel like that he's going to go out and get a knockout to try to prove him? Because like you said, he was kind of pacing in those first couple rounds. He kind of could have finished him, but he was toying with him a little bit. Do you feel like he goes and gets that knockout just to make a point with it?
I think so. He looks kind of annoyed in all these press conferences. I don't know if you saw these press conferences, but I've never seen a fighter like so annoyed about getting it over with. And I remember this happened before, not saying that he is in this class, but Lennox Lewis got knocked out by Hasim Rahman in the 1st round. Okay, Lennox Lewis is a Hall of Famer. Hasim Rahman was champion for 1 fight. Okay, because Lennox Lewis got the fight back right away and said, look, that was lucky. You landed an overhand right out of nowhere. I didn't see it, and you dropped me. Now I'm going to punish you. And, of course, Lennox Lewis punished Hasim Rahman and gained his heavyweight title back. Not saying that they're in the same, although they're from the same town and everything. I'm not saying that they're in the same class, but it's the same class of fight. Povetkin is on the way out. He was very good once, but he is on the way out, and right. I think he goes on the way out for good on Saturday.
He's all done for. Well, let's talk about Dillian Whyte a little bit. Do you feel like this sets up a bigger match for him, or what do you feel like the next biggest match for him is?
Well, the proof is in the pudding. Like, a lot of people like to talk about Dillian Whyte and say, he's not in the class of an Anthony Joshua or even a Wilder or a Tyson Fury. Well, the fact is that Anthony Joshua has been ducking Dillian Whyte for a while. Okay, and he's been trying to call out these guys in the heavyweight division. Nobody wants to fight him, so maybe there's something to it. So obviously, he wins this fight, wins it impressively. He should be in line for the winner of Joshua Fury, or at worst, he should get a fight with Wilder.
And I think that's a 2-fight deal that the Joshua and Fury thing.
Yeah.
That's a 2-fight, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's gonna be fun. That's gonna be fun. That's gonna set up a pretty big fight. Let's get into the next fight because we have another fight as well. Ortiz versus Arreola. Break that fight down for me. What's going on with that one?
Well, Arreola is a crowd favorite. He's going to come forward. He's going to make the fight. Ortiz throws punches and bunches. You know, I know he doesn't. He's not the greatest looking guy in the ring because he's pudgy. All right, but he throws a bunch of punches. He has good fast hands, great feet. If let's be real about this. If Ortiz looked like an Adonis, if he had Francis Ngannou's body, everybody will be talking about this is one of the greatest fighters in the world. But unfortunately, he really got up to fight Anthony Joshua the first time in Brooklyn, beat him. The second time they fought in Dubai, I believe it was in Dubai, and come on, he came in 15 pounds heavier, didn't train too hard, then trying to turn it on later on in the fight. And Anthony Joshua, he ran out the clock on him, but he didn't take any chances. So that tells you a lot about what Joshua thought of Ortiz. Ortiz is legit. Arreola is just an opponent nowadays. A lot of guys are saying, why is Arreola getting licensed? That guy has more mileage than anybody in the heavyweight division. Jeez. There was a time he was a lot of fun to watch, but the odometer is like pegged and the transmission is about to go out. So I would say Ortiz gets rid of him in short order, inside of 5 rounds, let's call it.
Do you feel like this is the last fight for him?
It should be. It should be the last fight for Chris Arreola. You were once great. You never made it. You know what I mean? You fought for some smaller titles. Okay, you got into the ring with some guys that were pretty good. You built up a good record. You made a lot of money. It's time to go. It's not going anywhere past this Saturday, I would say.
Sounds good. Talk to me about the boxing fights coming up in the world, coming up in the future. Not this weekend, but everything coming up in the boxing world in the future.
Well, April 3rd, this fight's been postponed twice, okay? We were supposed to talk about this fight February 27th. In fact, we actually had the poster already set up, and we were going to talk about it that day because the fight was only 3 days away, and they canceled it. That fight was supposed to happen on February 27th, and of course, I'm talking about Jermell Herring against Carl the Jackal Frampton. It got moved to March 27th. They couldn't get the venue, and now it's moved again, and now it's happening. We hope. April 3rd, that should be a great fight. Jermell Herring, Carl Frampton. Carl Frampton's one of my favorite boxers. Jermell Herring's on the come up. It's a weird story how they should have gotten here originally. COVID got in the way. Jermell Herring tested positive for COVID. They had to cancel the fight once. Then Carl Frampton came to the United States, couldn't get licensed because of COVID. Had to go back to the UK. UK had a lockdown. He couldn't get out of the UK. So both fighters, no fault of their own, were made inactive for almost 8 months. They're back. They should fight April 3rd. That fight's in Dubai. It'll be on ESPN Plus. That's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
That's a lot of fun fights. Obviously, we got Francis Ngannou versus Miocic, but getting into next week, right? Bellator is actually going to get started. They're going to get started on Friday. ONE FC, right, where Demetrius Johnson fights. He's going to be headlining ONE on TNT, so they're going to be on American television. That's going to be April 7th, and obviously, again, April 9th, they're going to get into Bellator. So next month, there's going to be 4 promotions that are going to be alive, right? Bellator is going to be every Friday. ONE FC, or not ONE Championship with Demetrius Johnson, Eddie Alvarez, those guys, they're going to be on Wednesday on TNT for the month, and then you're going to have PFL on ESPN2. Obviously, they have Rory McDonald, they have Anthony Pettis, they have a couple of guys, or a couple people there, Kayla Harrison, that maybe that's a future fight for Amanda Nunes, right? And then obviously you have ONE or UFC on ESPN, and then crazy amount of fights next month.
Let me
Anything
ask you a
else?
question.
I'm sorry?
Ask you one question on the way out.
Yes.
Clarissa Shields was on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he kind of floated a kickboxing fight. Her against Amanda Nunes. Who's the favorite?
Kickboxing,
Yes.
Amanda Nunes. I mean, she has head kick knockouts. You know what I mean? Like if you can low kick in kickboxing, right?
Yes,
I'm
you
pretty
could
sure you
kick.
can. Yeah.
You can't kick in the knees, I believe.
Okay,
You could
right.
kick
Yeah,
on the
because I watched
thighs.
some of.
You could kick the thighs. You could kick the chins.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so because I watched some Glory, right? Glory kickboxing. It's so much fun to watch. It's like if you want to watch MMA without the clinching, you can watch kickboxing, right? It's a good medium between boxing and MMA because you don't get the grappling quite as much. So Glory kickboxing is really fun. You know, not Francis. Overeem was a K1 kickboxing champion, right? He was great kickboxing. Or Jairzinho is a great kickboxer. Joanna Jacek she's a great kickboxer. So kickboxers work in the UFC, right? But yeah, I would think that Nunes would be the favorite in that fight. She would chop the tree down, right? Clarissa could not withstand those low kicks coming up, and I don't think she
She
would get
looks
that
good in
one.
the gym, but Amanda Nunes is Amanda Nunes. And one last fight. I know I'm asking a lot of questions here, but Zhang and Rose, is that happening?
Yeah. So do you know the full card for that one?
I have no idea when it is, what
Oh,
UFC it's going to be, but
that's
all I heard was Zhang and Rose, and I got excited right away.
Oh, it's great. So headlining that card, it's actually gonna be in Jacksonville, Florida.
Okay.
Right? They're having a crowd. That's the first event with a crowd back. You have Masvidal versus Usman headlining. You have Shevchenko versus. I'm sorry.
I smell road trip.
Yeah, probably. I mean, if Masvidal can get it done, that'd be hella fun, right? I would love to see that happen, but I don't see that fight changing too much. Co-main event, you have Shevchenko versus Jessica Andrade. That's a great fight. That's a very, very fun fight, right? She just dominated. Was it Jessica that Andrade destroyed with that body punch?
Yeah.
Nasty body punch, right? She was like 4 inches shorter, and she finished with it. And then you have the third championship fight, like you said, Weili Zhang taking on Rose Namajunas. Oh my God, that is fun. And I think Weidman is on that card too. Chris Weidman's on that card is fighting as well. So a couple of fun fights. I think Khabib's cousin is fighting on either this card this weekend or the card next weekend. Let me look at this one and see what it is. If it's this one, Khabib's going to be cornering this guy. Yeah, it's this weekend actually. Abubakar Nurmagomedov. He's coming in as a favorite, and he's a guy that trained under Khabib. And I wrote that article on 5 Reasons Sports that what's Khabib's next best move, and that was when he retired initially, not the recent retirement. I thought coaching was gonna be the next best thing, and dude, he's taking over this coaching range and he's going with it really well. So be interesting to see if his next young prodigy gets a win on this Saturday. Any final thoughts before we close it out today?
No, it's a great Saturday. It's always fun when the heavyweights get in. It's not so much an exhibition of skill, but it's an exhibition of power.
Right.
So the baddest man in the planet gets crowned on Saturday. That's always fun to watch.
Yes, the baddest rematch goes down this Saturday, UFC 260. It's going to be a fun one. Obviously, keep it locked in right here next week on Fight Week on 5. We're going to have you guys previewed with every boxing match, every UFC fight, and keeping you up to date with all the fights coming up and all your latest news as well. Thanks for checking out Fight Week on 5, brought to you by the 5 Reasons Sports Network. We got Alf. I'm Jonathan, and I hope you guys have a great day.